What's going on, you guys? It's your boy Patrick, aka Addicted to Combat, back for another week of Best Bets and Props, where I go over all of my bets placed for this Saturday's UFC card, which is UFC 284, a special pay-per-view where we have a rare treat in this sport, champion versus champion matchup. Alexander Volkanovski, the featherweight champion, stepping up 10 pounds to challenge the current reigning lightweight champion, Islam Makhachev. An awesome super fight in that potential 5-round bout in the main event. Co-main event is a featherweight interim title fight between Yair Rodriguez and Josh Emmett, so that's a fun 5-round potential scrap as well. 13 fights on this card set in Australia, a lot of local talent there. I have 6 bets, which consist of 2 money lines, 2 parlays, and 2 time props. So without further ado, hit the like, hit the subscribe, and let's break into the first money line I've bet, which is in the co-main event, Yair Rodriguez to defeat Josh Emmett and become the interim featherweight champion over 5 rounds in this bout. 2 units placed at minus 155. The money line has moved a little bit further in Yair Rodriguez's favor, but I think he's the better striker in this basically striker versus striker matchup. Josh Emmett does have a wrestling background. He's one of these MMA wrestle boxers that fell in love with his power, and you can't blame him for that. He's got 9 knockdowns or so out of his career so far. Not too many knockouts, but he does win moments on the scorecards. As we saw against Calvin Kattar last time out in 2022, he was able to win that very close split decision by being the aggressor and winning the big eye-catching moments, doing the most perceived damage. Now, Calvin Kattar was trying to work backwards, use the jab to maintain distance over Josh Emmett, but Yair Rodriguez not only has the slick striking with the hands, but his kicks are very good as well, and I think those will further maintain distance and add striking output in his favor. Not to mention, Yair's got power as well, and he's a very creative striker, so Yair Rodriguez, a very young guy in the division at this point still, and most guys to beat him have had to wrestle him, guys like Frankie Edgar and guys like Max Holloway. So without that, that part of Josh Emmett's game, I don't expect him to wrestle in this bout. I see Rodriguez probably winning a 5-round decision here. The next money line I have is a half-unit shot on an underdog, Modestas Bukauskas, to defeat Tyson Pedro, who's a sizable favorite here. Hometown crowd for Tyson Pedro, a short notice bout for the returning Modestas Bukauskas, who was cut from the UFC, just won 2 bouts and won the Cage Warriors Championship, and now he's back in the UFC for this matchup. Now, I understand that Tyson Pedro is dangerous. He's a very fast starter in round 1, and Modestas Bukauskas has been put out in round 1 before by Jimmy Crute, who we'll actually see on this card as well, but Tyson Pedro has lost every bout that has left round 1. I do think that Modestas Bukauskas is the more technical striker, the better point scorer as far as the judges are concerned, and might have better cardio. It's been a long time since we've seen Tyson Pedro really pushed in a fight or actually win a fight that's a meaningful one. It's been years. Tyson Pedro just came off of a very successful 2022, but it was round 1 finishes on Ike Villanueva and Harry Hunsucker, 2 of the worst guys in the roster at light heavyweight. So there's no way that I can really gain too much from that to make a minus 200 or more favorite price tag on Tyson Pedro. Even before that, he had a 3-year-long layoff for injury, and before that, he was coming off of a 2-loss streak. So what do we really know about Tyson Pedro? I understand he's got this loose, powerful striking. He's got a very good ground game, so if he could take the fight to the mat, and I knew he would do that sooner than later, I would pick him to win this fight. But where the money line is at, I have to take the guy that I know can go down the stretch of a fight and maybe make things difficult for Tyson Pedro, who seems round 1 or bust at this point. So purely a play on the money line that I think is mispriced. Give me that half-unit stab at plus 205 on Modestas Bukauskas. The next bet is the first of 2 parlays I have. This is a 2-leg parlay between Jack Jenkins and Jack Della Maddalena, 2 guys that I'm very confident in. Jack Jenkins is one of my more confident picks on the entire card. This featherweight is making his debut off a successful Dana White Contender Series spot, and he's a very well-rounded fighter. Good technical boxing, good Muay Thai, and a very good ground game as well. Seems like his cardio holds up. He's taken on a guy named Don Shainis, who made his debut last fall. It only lasted 30 seconds before Don Shainis was choked out by Sadiq Youssef. Don Shainis is a very limited, kind of a wrestle brawling style where he swings wildly, tries to take his opponent's head off in round 1, tries to get the fight to the mat, and then he employs ground and pound from there. But he's fought a very limited level of opponent. nobody at the level of Jack Jenkins. So I think Jack Jenkins will get this done inside the distance. Again, using that well-rounded skill set, probably grounding this fight and softening up Don Shainis on the mat. Now, Jack Della Maddalena has a much tougher test ahead of him. He does have to face Randy Brown, who's a multi-fight UFC veteran of, I think, like 14 fights at this point. A very big, physically imposing welterweight. 6'3" with I think like a 78-inch reach for Randy Brown, who's got pretty good skill on the feet and decent grappling as well. But I still think Jack Della Maddalena will get the job done, just like he did all 3 of his UFC fights in 2022. Round-to-1 knockouts for all of those. I'm not saying he gets a round-to-1 finish in this spot, but he does have the capacity to actually go all 3 rounds. We saw in the Contender Series, he outpointed Angelusa. And Jack is actually a brown belt in BJJ as well if he chooses to take the fight to the mat. I saw in one of his pre-UFC fights, he actually did face one man who was about the size of Randy Brown, and Jack on the inside took the fight to the ground, nullified that size difference, and rained down ground and pound. I just really think that Jack's striking is something special. You know, Randy Brown is a guy who's got that loose, hands-down style, really uses his movement and tries to bait people in by keeping the hands low and inviting them to strike so we can counter effectively. But Jack has got so many selection of weapons to choose from. He's just a very powerful guy, and I think he can eventually time the head movements of Randy Brown and put him in all sorts of trouble. Whether he wins the fight inside the distance or by judges' scorecards, I'm not quite sure. This is a very big step up in competition, but I think he has all the tools to get the job done. My second parlay is another 2-leg parlay between Loma Lukbunmi on the prelims at strawweight and in the main event at lightweight, Islam Makhachev to remain champion and defeat Alexander Volkanovski. So these are 2 fighters I've got pretty good confidence in. 2.5 units on this combined minus 132 parlay. So the Loma Lukbunmi fight, she's taking on Elise Reed at strawweight here. A striker versus striker matchup for the most part. Although Loma does have not only the power and the striking output advantage, but she's got the grappling advantage as well, taking down 5 out of her 6 UFC opponents so far. Loma can nullify that size difference she often faces and employ ground and pound with nasty elbows. And she's just got very good Muay Thai technique, very good clinch knees and clinch elbows. And I think Elise Reed definitely has her hands full here with her 2-2 record. Her best moment for Elise Reed just came in a very close decision, defeating a debuting fighter. So I'm pretty confident in Loma Lukbunmi here. Now, Islam Makhachev has a very tough test ahead of him. This is a very challenging opponent in Alexander Volkanovski, who, even though he's always undersized, he manages to close distance very well and land a lot of strikes per minute. Almost 7 significant strikes landed per minute on a huge sample size average for the featherweight champion Volkanovski. But Islam Makhachev gets hit less than any UFC fighter so far on average, and his wrestling is just on a whole different level. I think he's going to be the much bigger, stronger man here, and usually when we see these grapplers with the takedown threat facing a very good striker, that striker's output is not what it normally is in their fights. So I see Makhachev actually getting the body lock. If Volkanovski gets in range with the boxing, he's going to be at risk of getting that body lock, giving that available to Makhachev. So I think Makhachev gets this fight inevitably to the mat. He gives no room to his opponents to get up to their feet. He plays it pretty safe, position over submission. But as soon as his opponent tries to scramble and, gives any opportunity to give up the submission, Makhachev will take it. And I think he does end this inside the distance at some point. But again, this is at some point in the fight. I don't know when that's going to be. Both guys here can be very patient. So I think the time props are actually a little bit risky. I don't think this sees the scorecards at the end of the day, but you never know how long Islam Makhachev is going to wait before he tries to take a risk and go for a submission. You never know how long Volkanovski is going to stay patient on his back before he tries to explode and scramble up, which could work for him or it could work to his detriment and give up a limb or a neck. So the time props, as far as the overs, I don't really have a good recommendation on. But I'd be surprised if this fight sees the scorecard. So I do like the under 4.5, even though I'm deciding not to play that. So there's the second parlay, Loma and Islam Makhachev in the main event. My final 2 bets of the card are 2 time props, both under 2.5 round props. The first is on the first prelim of the night, Zubaira Tukhugov taking on Elvis Brenner. This fight to go under 2.5 rounds is plus 115. I put 1 unit on that. And I like this spot because it's a very big skill gap between Zubaira Tukhugov, who's been in the UFC about 8 years now or more. This will be his 9th fight. He's moving up a weight class, and he's already a very powerful striker with round 1 finishing power. This might add to his power and his finishing potential, not having to deal with that weight cut that gave him issues. He's taking on Elvis Brenner, who's on short notice, a young Brazilian from the Shoot to Box Diego Lima camp in Brazil. This guy's a finisher, so 12 of his 13 wins for Brenner have come inside the distance. 9 of those 13 specifically have been under 2.5 rounds. So it really does fit the win condition of Elvis Brenner, this under 2.5 round prop. If he does get the job done, it's probably by syncing up some sort of submission. But that's going to be tough against Tukhugov, who's got the power, the striking advantage by far, and even on the ground, he's the better grappler, in my opinion. The smothering top pressure, the ability to get takedowns or defend them. I think Tukhugov gets this job done very early, possibly in round 1 by finish. The next time prop is the final bet of the card. This is another under 2.5 round spot. Minus 155 is the cost on this one. I put 1.55 units for the Jamie Mullarkey versus Francisco Prado fight to go under 2.5 rounds. Looking at violence at this spot, just like the first time prop we talked about, this is a big skill gap, and it's a 6-fight veteran in Jamie Mullarkey at lightweight, welcoming a short notice debuting fighter in Francisco Prado, who's another South American fighter, this time an Argentinian making his debut. And Prado is 20 years old with an 11-0 record. All of those 11 wins have been inside the distance. I believe 8 have been in round 1, but I think only 1 fight actually went over the 1.5 round mark, and we're getting the price on the under 2.5 here. So Jamie Mullarkey is also a finisher himself. He's got knockout power in his hands, a good ability to play the zombie, absorb damage early, come back and wear you out as the fight goes into round 2 and 3. And he's a BJJ black belt as well. So out of Jamie Mullarkey's 15 wins, he's finished 13 of those inside the distance and under 2.5 rounds. Likewise, he's been finished out of his 5 losses 3 times, and those have all been under 2.5 rounds as well. So both guys finishing potential. Francisco Prado has got like half of his wins by knockout, half by submission. He's got very powerful hands, and if he wins, I believe it would be in round 1, catching Jamie Mullarkey, who can be hittable, and putting him out. So that would cash our ticket there, but I think more likely Jamie Mullarkey can overwhelm him, expose his fraudulent cardio. A lot of the opponents of Francisco Prado were very low level in Argentina, and, I think their cardio was just a little bit worse than his. He was able to work through that fatigue and outlast them. I don't think that happens here. I think Mullarkey does overwhelm Francisco and take him out by TKO in round 2. But either way, if either man wins before halfway through the 3rd round, we will cash that ticket. And there you have it. That's all the 6 bets for this card. 2 money lines, 2 parlays, and 2 time props for UFC 284, the big champion versus champion pay-per-view this Saturday. I cannot wait for all of these 13 fights. I know in the next couple days we'll have to endure the nervousness of the weigh-ins and things like that, but it'll be so much fun seeing the face-offs, and I cannot wait for this weekend. So hit the like, hit the subscribe. Check out BetUS, who is the betting sportsbook partner of this channel. I have the information for the promo code Addicted2Combat125 in the description, and I'll put it on the screen so you can see. All you need to do is use that promo code and the link in the description, and you can use BetUS as a new customer and get a 125% deposit bonus on your first deposit, all the way up to $2,500. Free money to gamble with betting on fights. All right, I'll talk to you guys very soon. Enjoy the fights and good luck on all of your betting action. Cheers.